Our first speaker is a seasoned entrepreneur. I think he's been part of several successful enterprises. Most recently, his company, MOVABLE, has a mission to get people moving, and we're going to hear about his story. So please, everybody welcome Blake Squires.
That's okay, we're good, there we go. All right, because I brought my tech, I saw some cat with Google Glass on back there too. Does this qualify as a pint or?
It's close.
Okay, all right.
We'll let you
Here we are.
This one,
All
so.
right, thank you.
Actually, how many people are wearing Google glasses this evening? We had quite a...
Yeah, more than one?
Yeah, we had 5 in the last one.
Cool.
All right. Blake, your most recent startup, MOVABLE, was inspired by something your wife said. So I'm interested, you could tell us maybe a little bit about that.
Sure.
But really how you took a vision of something and made it into an actual business model that you could sell investors, employees.
Yeah. So in 2009, I was embedded pretty deeply in Findaway World, a company that I helped start. And my partners and I decided to put the business up for sale. And in that moment, after 5 years of growing this company and heads down, it was kind of the first time it was like, okay, I better start thinking about what's next. And candidly, I tend to think about what's next all the time, but at this moment, I said, honey, I think we're going to sell this company, and what should we do? And I looked at her, and she said, well, we have to combat obesity. I think she said something about dummy, or what'd you say, honey? She's here as well, but so that was, that first inspiration of we have to do something about obviously a very significant problem in the U.S. So really that was an inspiration, but now fast forward 2.5 years, that's actually the vision. That is the vision for the company. We aim to improve the health and performance of people everywhere through a simple product, a platform, and a program. So how it happened was really about having this inspiration and then just going about my day and thinking and seeing, I'm like a total home networking geek and seeing gadgets and technology, and I saw the Nike Plus where you had to put something in your shoe, and in early 2010 I realized there's an emerging technology trend about to happen, and how can we apply that to this need or this problem? And so that was really the inspiration early on.
Okay, so you said you spent some time yourself exploring the idea. Could you just kind of break that down? How long did it take you to come up with something, and maybe what was the process you used to validate the initial idea?
Right. Well, it starts with curiosity. Early on, again, we realized there was a product opportunity here. So started engaging teams from China on the product side to start designing. A great firm, actually in Taylor, is an elevator building, is Balance Product Design. They helped the industrial design. Also engaged IDO, who really helped us evaluate the market, and attorneys to look at the patent landscape. So we basically started doing our homework, and more than anything, we were vetting this idea. Me at the time, and this was again 2010. The business wasn't founded until mid-2011.
So it appears that your two companies, MOVABLE and Findaway, it's kind of a similar setup in a way. They both involve having a physical electronic device, and you're approaching a very specific market. So could you tell me, how did your experience of Findaway directly influence your experience now at MOVABLE?
Well, as we were working the product and then also looking at the market, it dawned on me, Findaway, which makes a product called Playaway, we launched that company in a product in 2005 when the iPod, was pretty much taking hold. And here we were, a little company in Cleveland, Ohio, launching an MP3 player, and people were like, are you freaking crazy? But what we did is we didn't just launch a product, we took technology, we actually followed the trend. Right? You had Apple investing hundreds, if not billions of dollars in creating this segment of consumer products. So we followed that, but we took the technology and costed it down. And that wasn't enough. We had to put a value add to it. So in Playaway's case, we preloaded the device with content. And then we took that offering not to a consumer retail margin-based market, but we took it B2B. So we sold it to schools and libraries and the military. And it dawned on me in Movable as we're going down these paths that, wait a minute, we're doing the same thing. You know, early on there wasn't this wearables trend that's out there today, but it dawned on me, we're taking this new trend of consumer electronics, which is called wearables now, or Internet of Things, whatever you want to call it. We're costing it down. The value add for Movable is really our mission, to move a population, to get healthy, and then we're taking it B2B. We go into workplaces and schools and municipalities, etc. So really that same formula.
Okay. This formula obviously was born out of experience and something you probably discovered yourself. But can you give
Maybe one night.
Can you give examples of where that has been done and maybe you took inspiration from?
Well, I mean, you know, there's in a startup environment, and Movable is a great example, and Findaway, another company of mine called Everstream, a software company. I mean, there's certain elements to a startup that I think are so important, and that is, you know, first define who you are, not what you do, because business is a journey, and you're always going to be figuring out what you do. You're never going to figure it out. You know, even if you get to a place where you're successful in sales, you got to reinvent yourself, because if you want to be a high growth company, and I'm talking about high growth companies, you always have to reinvent and innovate. So, you know, there's some other formulas just inside starting a business, you know, being an entrepreneur. I have some ideas that over the years, you know, there's a big aspect of it is you have to believe, you have to be prepared, you have to have luck, and you have to just do. So there's certain things that I've learned.
Okay, looking into that a little bit, what are the key things? It appears to me from speaking to you and from speaking to you tonight that you enjoy building companies, and you're as much a company builder as you are a product builder. And I just wonder if you could expand on the key things you find important to build a successful company.
Well, you know, building anything is a creative process. So, and creativity needs guardrails. And so, you know, there's, again, I was just speaking a bit to this very needed element inside of the business, and that's called values, you know, the who you are. Because as you build a company, it's really a selling process and a validation process along the way. Again, you never quite figure out exactly what you're doing, you just this ongoing journey or process. And so, you know, creating a set of values that are the definition of who the business is, then with that in hand, and you know, some glimpse of obviously a business plan and what you're going to do, and obviously you have to attract capital or start selling right away, you're able to pull talent together. And so the foundation with talent, you know, my job as the CEO is to set the vision, and thankfully my wife helped setting. It's really nice to be the CEO of a company when it was your wife's idea, but you know, setting the vision, ensuring the right resources are in hand, and then really, if the right talent is on the bus, you know, my job is to get the hell out of the way.
So values is kind of it's a difficult thing to really get your hands on. You know, I'm sure you can write them down. First of all, how do you come up with the values, and then how do you instill these values in the company?
Well, you know, it's the two companies that I actually had other partners that I founded them with. Movable, arguably, my wife is obviously my partner, and I founded it with her, but it was her inspiration of the idea. And you know, the first day when we started the business, we actually collected some friends who were investors as well in starting it, and we sat down. It was before the first employee and person working for it, and we spent time, and I think it took about 2 weeks to really define our core our values, that we could express them and talk about them. And then as the first few people joined, you know, again, business is a journey and it's validation, and the first 2 or 3 people that joined, it's like, does this make sense to you? Does this resonate? And yes, 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 and so boom, those things are locked in stone, because again, that's who we are.
So how tightly is this wound to the business model in Movable? Maybe even at the start. I'm sure that many people here are in a rush to make that first dollar and may not think so much about values as much as how can we just make the first dollar? So how do you tie that in? Like, even with the amount of time you spend on trying to define values versus going out and actually trying to sell something?
Well, I mean, it becomes the culture. So it is what the business is. Again, it's who we are. But then obviously, it almost becomes the unspoken language. But it's the reminders of if I'm misbehaving or somebody else is misbehaving, or that we can all interact and talk with one another. So it becomes this almost unspoken but highly visible and very real element inside the business. And then, of course, there is the business at hand, which is back to setting the vision as a team, coming up with the milestones, and then as we either hit or miss, and we miss a lot of milestones, it's, okay, why did that happen? How did it happen? How do we shift? How do we zig? How do we zag?
Change the subject a little bit. How important is it for you to rush after bigger partners as opposed to individual customers? How important has it been in previous ventures, and how important is it now?
Again, it's a process of validation, and if you can validate something with a world-class partner, brand, customer, then you pretty much, figured something out. With Findaway World, we started the business aiming at retail. And when we started the business, we had no product. We had this idea. We didn't even know how to build a product. We went to publishers, and publishers said, if you find a retailer, and again, we're thinking retail, if you find a retailer, then we'll talk to you. So we have to find a retailer. We showed up at, we were fortunate enough to meet with the CEO of Borders, and he said, I love it, I get the concept, get a publisher, and my stores are yours. So we had this bit of a chicken and egg, but in that moment, that validation of Borders, and then we were able to go back to the HarperCollins and the Random Houses and actually get their content. Now, and again, it's that whole validation. At MOVABLE, our customers are another form of validation. And hopefully, it's not just validation, but they're also contributing to the sales and the fuel that grow the business.
How did you get Borders? How did that happen?
Relationship. Key element of an entrepreneur is you better spend a lot of time on your network. If you're not, then you better get at it. Somebody in our network knew somebody that was on the board, and on a flyer, the CEO of Borders took a meeting. And so, part of whenever we tackle anything as a business, first and foremost, go to the top. Think about who is the world class, because they're just a phone call away. So we literally called up the CEO, showed up in Ann Arbor, took a meeting, and we got him, but there were some contingencies, there always are. You better get publishers. Oh, by the way, you better build a product, which we had sort of designed, but not really. We showed up with some business cards and said, imagine if this is a book that could talk to you. But hey, it worked, right?
Okay, so the Borders relationship didn't necessarily work out. It didn't become a success as a consumer product in Borders, for example.
Right. Yeah.
But it did open opportunities elsewhere. How quick was that pivot from consumer Borders to almost a B2B model, was it?
Sure. Yeah. No, we failed. Let's be clear. We failed miserably at retail. I mean, we put several $1 million of product in the channel, and bookstores are really hard places to try to convey marketing and a message to a consumer. So we just, we basically, nothing happened. And I think the company is still getting returns from that initial set back in 2005. But what happened while we were at retail was librarians started finding the product. And they started saying, my gosh, this is a better way to circulate an audiobook, which at the time was a box set of CDs. So the librarians started calling us and saying, how many titles do you have? How many books do you have? We have 10. Can you get 10,000, please? Yes, we can. We'll be right back at you. That moment, the change, it took about 1.5 years. We transformed the entire business. We went back and we did a capital raise. We changed our manufacturing from Mexico to China. We brought all the loading of content stateside. It was a total reinvention of the business, but business is, again, I'll say a journey, and it's as much as finding out where those right places are for the business, and then when you find them, you better be prepared and you better dive and do.
For any moment, I presume for any moment, for how long did you feel that you didn't want to do the reinvention, that you wanted to kind of stick to your guns and stick with the consumer?
I think we were naive as hell, and we had this like do or die mentality, and again, to me, that goes back to the values. I mean, we had assembled a great team, and there was just this surefire, this thing's going to happen, it's going to work. So, and it was either going to work or it wasn't. And hopefully somewhere in that process, if it didn't work, then some other, last time it was a librarian, but hopefully something else called on us, or the market started speaking to us to help us determine where to pivot and where to go before we ran out of cash. But
okay, so talking money now. Talking money. So you've been involved in numerous ventures, pretty much all venture-backed, or at least you raised a certain amount for each one of them.
None venture-backed, but one backed by strategic partners, our customers, and then Findaway was 100% angel.
Okay.
And MOVABLE today it's 100% angel as well. And Jumpstart's an investor in MOVABLE as well, so some other forms of capital.
What have you learned over the years in terms of raising capital, and how did you approach MOVABLE, and how would you approach your next venture?
So it's obviously a process, and it's about getting to the milestones, and it's about really taking your vision and having a broad plan, understanding where does it go long term and how and why does it go there. I mean, you have to understand, at least in this is the guardrails piece. I have a 5-year plan, and as you build those things out, part of raising the capital is it's going to take you twice as long to raise the capital, and then by the time you get somebody to say yes, it's going to take you, hopefully you can go 60 days, but usually about 120 days just to close it. So whatever time you think it'll take, quadruple it. But the main thing, and I think you hear that all the time, but the main thing is don't oversell it. I'm a leader that I like to do what I say I'm going to do. I mean, what fun is managing and being inside of a business where the wheels are falling off and you've made all of these promises to people. So don't oversell things. Be very realistic, because it's great when you're presenting to your board. Well, here's our earnings, and guess what? We freaking beat them. Versus what's going wrong here? What's happening? The flip side of that in fundraising is you can't undersell, right? If you undersell it, then your valuation is going to get hit, and you're going to leave a lot on the table, and you may not be able to raise additional capital. So it's a fine line, but if I were to pick the line, I would say don't oversell, but be clear that you don't undersell too far. More pints.
Yeah. I thought there might have been something going on downstairs, but apparently it's just the hum of our mics. So in that regard, is there a level of the value of a company that you want to build that's like the minimum amount you want to cash out on, hopefully cash out on in the end? Like when you talk to many investors, particularly those who spread their bets amongst many companies, it's always bet on $10 billion ideas and hope one works out for you, or at least some. For an entrepreneur yourself who goes after funding, is there a level that you think at you kind of knock off ideas when you feel like maybe it won't have that eventual big sell?
Well, fortunate, the first company, we had an exit to a public company, and it was of a certain size, and then Findaway World was of a certain size, and so I've kind of got this experience of, one was a software company, one was a product company, and so I kind of, looking inside myself, I can get a company to about 30, 40 million, and then it's like, it's either 5-6 years and my attention is gone, or it's like just not my thing, because I enjoy that early process, and I look forward to being involved with one that is going through maybe a reinvention or innovation. But again, it's less about is there a threshold or a size, and it's more about what's realistic for the idea and how well have you vetted the possibility. And if you're being realistic in what you can build, I mean, Movable's target is to build a $35 million company. And based on the capital that we're raising, when we do that, people are going to have a great return. Now, in the process, the team and I are like, holy shit, we might get to like 100 and more, and that's all upside, and that's great, right? But you're right. I mean, in the venture capital community, the process is a lot of times place a lot of bets, and you got to make sure if you're going to place a bet, it's a horse that's ready to run and is looking at a very sizable exit opportunity. And I think we're blessed here. I'm a native Clevelander. Akron is home, and I think we're blessed in Northeast Ohio because we're realists. And you can build a company that creates a lot of jobs, has a lot of value, and can do a lot of good without just needing to say, "I've got the next $1 billion idea."
Okay, so I'm gonna ask some questions of the audience. Does anybody? No, do you know your tweeters? Does anyone want to ask a question? Somebody raising their hand. This is your opportunity to ask a question. And please don't be shy. There's questions out there. Anybody? Yeah.
What if you came up with the brand and the concept and the idea, and your domain name is taken? Do you use a surrogate, or do you come up with a new brand?
Okay, so the question is, if you come up with a new idea or concept and the domain is taken, what do you do?
If you're betting on a domain name for your idea, and no offense and with the utmost respect, I would really rethink, what you're doing if that's the core to your idea. I mean, with Movable, it happened. In fact, we started the business. It was called Move Band, which is the product, and we went through a whole branding revision. And for a while, our domain was We Are Movable, because the guy who had Movable wanted like 100 grand. And fortunately, just beating the guy up over time, we were able to get it for a reasonable amount, but still. So, a domain name, I mean, the heart to your question though, a brand, we build companies, I build companies that the brand is at the center, creativity is at the center, so the brand is everything, and people have tried to get creative with the .oys and all this other stuff, and and it's all okay, as long as you can feel confident that, and again, it's about validation, it's about legitimacy, and if you feel like you believe in the expression of your company, whatever that is, then you're good to go, and don't worry if the domain name is exactly like you wanted it, as long as it's close and you can feel good about it.
Okay. The next person asking a question will get a free t-shirt.
Oh, t-shirts.
Okay, shout out now.
The third person will get that guy's Google Glass.
Go ahead, I can review.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what were the unforeseen hurdles that you had along the way, and how have you done things differently, or how did you overcome them?
So that's what are the unforeseen hurdles he's seen along the way, and how has he dealt with them?
Yeah. Do you want to know about today's, or like in a broad scope of?
Oh, today.
Well, today we're launching a whole new pricing strategy, and and it's really changing a lot of our business, and it's launching Monday. And Dana, our head of marketing, is here, and last night at 10 o'clock, she's sending out the creative that's the developers are standing by, ready to modify the whole site to move against. And we looked at it and it was like, this really sucks. It's just not conveying the right. So immediately in the morning we're there, and so I mean, that's just a really brief. I mean, there's not a day that doesn't go by that there's literally like 10 things, 10 fires, and the way you overcome them is, again, I go back to this platform of creating a culture surrounding and having the right talent inside of it. If I'm stuck somewhere, I'll look to somebody next to me and say, what do you think, what do we do? It's constantly about solving those issues as quickly as you can, staying on path and on track with what you're doing. And at the end of the day, if you believe in it, then it'll work itself out.
Okay, one more question. And I'll expect lots of hands to go up now that we're getting the right t-shirts. By the way, the last two people, give your email address to any one of these green t-shirt people. Okay, so one more. Yeah?
How would you compare brand building versus flexibility and being able to respond to market trends?
So how would you compare brand building?
How would you prioritize
How would you prioritize brand building versus?
versus being able to respond to the market?
Well, no, I mean, number one is be ready and be able to respond to the market, hands down, because if you don't, if you can't, your brand, your company won't be relevant. And the way to make it relevant, again, is to milestone, validation, traction, and that's when the business becomes real.
Okay, Blake, thank you very much.
Thank you.